All right. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Elite Physique University. I'm here with just John and Jason this week, and we're going to talk about mistakes that you should avoid if you want to build muscle. So, before we get going on that, of course, we have to go over how everyone's doing. So, anything that's new for you guys. Jason, you were just talking about you had like 5 groups of mentees going now.
Yeah. I have 5 groups, and I'm taking a wait list for group 6, but that won't start till January when one of the other groups drops off. I feel like 5 is about it because like I got this podcast till 5, then I got a mentor group at 5 to 6, and I got one 6 to 7, and a lot of my nights are like that, and it's a lot. So I think I'm gonna cap it at 5, and then I'll always keep a wait list. So anyone listening, if you're interested, we do a deep dive into functional nutrition, the main things that I see problems with. Obviously there's a whole gamut that you could teach, but it's a 4-month course, and I go over the main things that I see day in, day out. So if you're interested, you can hit me up and get on the wait list. It's total spend because it's a group. It's $1,200. I do these things solo, and it's $1,000 a month. But you know what? I've been trying to touch more people. I'm trying to get more coaches that can afford it so they can do good work. And I figure that way, it's kind of my way to kind of get my imprint further as well. So that's about it there. Anything else going on? No, I'm having clients hitting the stage. I've had some pretty cool wins. I had a gal win Miss America, and then she stepped up and won the next show. And she's a natural pro. I've had some other people placing well in the NPC and doing all that too. So I'm still coaching bodybuilders and physique athletes. So I think that's about it. Personally, dealing with my dad who has Parkinson's with dementia, and it's moving really fast. So it's kind of a hard thing to watch someone that you knew as a strong fireman, bodybuilder guy, and now it's kind of just all unraveling, and it's unraveling a lot quicker than what I thought. His dad lived to be 98. His dad lived to be 97. I kind of thought that would happen with my dad, and it's not. So a lot going on here, but I'm here, so I'm ready to roll. Let's talk about training. That's it.
Busy as always. What are you eating over there, man? It looked like some spaghetti or some kind of pasta.
No, I had a sweet potato, and I actually have 2 scoops of Isoperfect with a half a scoop of Phat snacks in this.
I do want to bring up you're using our Phat snacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the dietary fat powder. Gotcha. Hey, I do want to bring up.
It's in my neat new NuEthix cup, but there is Phat snacks in
here. I appreciate you.
Product placement.
Yeah, there we go. I do want to bring up a real quick story because I know we don't have a lot of time, but it's funny talking about you and eating sweet potatoes.
Uh-huh.
You probably know where I'm going to go. You were working as a lawyer. You brought your food to lunch with you and to eat at lunch out of Tupperware, and you were prepping, and you posted on Facebook. You're like, when you're 4 weeks out and you drop a sweet potato on the floor and you have to get your food in, you just eat it. And I remember everybody's like, oh my God, that's so gross. And you're like, you just eat it cold and you just keep rolling. And I remember I pointed out, I was like, dude, I know what it's like on the bottom of my shoes when I walk into a guy's bathroom. You deleted the whole post. You're like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm done with it. But every time you eat a sweet potato, I always think of that story. But I also remember you back in the day traveling on an airplane talking about eating cold beef and potatoes with some mustard on or something. Like, dude, you just do what you got to do. So
that was probably traveling for a show. I will do that. If it's not a show, it's tuna and almonds. That's how I get through my travel. I don't even worry about carbs. I just hit tuna and almonds every time I'm hungry.
So from talking about me, what's new with me, I do want to point something out because we have a lot of coaches that listen to the show that are trying to do things like what you're just talking about, Jason, like you're giving classes, you're doing mentorship. We own supplement companies, we lecture, like we do all these different things. And I just want to drive this home that a lot of you are just starting out. If you're only in this a year, don't think that you're going to be able to go fill up a mentorship class. You're going to be able to go write a book, or you're going to do all these things. we're trying to, a lot of the stuff that we talk about here, we've been doing this 10, 15, 20 years. And a lot of this stuff that we're talking about now is going to help get you to that point. So stay patient. I've just gotten a lot of emails this week about, people wanting consults and, some consulting and stuff like that. And I always have to drive home. You've only been doing it a year. Get good as a coach. Like that's your main thing. So Jason, you talked about, you still have bodybuilders hitting the stage and you emphasize that, dude, that's all three of us. That's our bread and butter. You know what I mean? Like our client base is our bread and butter. So for the coaches listening out there, just remember, you'll be able to do stuff like that. Just keep grinding as a coach. As far as me, this is going to air a little bit later. It'll probably be in December, Kayla, probably at some point in December. So this is right before Thanksgiving. I've been talking about the holiday protocol with my clients. I usually chill out a little bit this time of year because you got the holidays coming up. So I don't really change my clients' plans those weeks. I set them up to where they can go eat with their family and relax and just kind of chill out. From a business standpoint, we've got, new products dropping, and I've still got a full client load. My athletes had a pretty good year. I'm pretty happy with that, but I've really been setting aside more time. I'll never drop my client base. Like, I say that, but I still want to be in my 50s working with clients. It's really what I love. I'll never drop that down, but I'm really jumping more into this role as the owner and CEO of Phat Muscle and just growing that. And that takes time, Jason, as you know. It takes time because it's really kind of me at the helm. And then, I've got some people underneath me. So most of my time outside of coaching is spent doing that. But other than that, I'm blessed. I'm ready for Thanksgiving. I'm ready for the holidays. I like to end the year on a slower note. I like to rest the end of the year where everybody's trying to like ramp up and like finish strong. I've been pushing like a motherfucker all year. So like I'm ready to kind of chill out and rest and do podcasts and things like that. So I'm in a good place. Probably going to shut Instagram down right at mid-December. I'll probably shut that down for a few months. I do that every year, and that kind of helps me get refueled. So I'm in a good place.
Good. Glad to hear that. I guess for me, by the time this airs, I'll have already done it, but I am putting together a cortisol and hormones webinar, if you want to call it that, just free for people. I've had a lot of interest in that, people asking questions about it. So I was like, well, let's just do free like webinar on Zoom, get people into that, just to give out information on a topic
When
like
you doing
that.
it?
What's that?
When you doing it? You want to plug it?
I think I'm gonna do it November 29th. It's like 2
Oh,
weeks.
it'll already be past.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So by the time this airs, it'll already be done.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll do another one. So if you're listening to this now, when it airs, I'll do another one though, because they're fun and I like to educate too. But like you guys were talking about earlier with the mentorship stuff, like I've only been in this, a few years now. And so like, I don't consider myself anywhere near like your guys' level by any means, but you have to start somewhere at some point. And I like to educate. So I'm like, okay, this is a topic I feel confident about. So I'm going to give one out and just grow from there. So yeah.
Kayla, it's a great way to get free information, give your time, people to get to know you.
Yep.
It's a win-win. And like I was talking about before, touching as many people as you can. That's part of it. So
Yep. So that's the goal. And then I guess like I've had this time of year we were just talking about before we went on kind of slows down a little bit for me. I've had people going in and out. So, and that's totally fine. Just people coming off with holidays and stuff like that. So no big deal. But yeah, I have athletes, I guess, getting ready for next year, which is fun to see. A couple reversing now. So they're doing pretty well. Otherwise, everything's just kind of like smooth sailing. We have snow up here already, so that's fun. But other than that,
I'll tell you what though, we have had snow though. We did get snow Monday.
oh really?
And it was flurrying today. Yep.
Wow.
Literally, okay, it wasn't Monday. I think it was Tuesday, but whatever it was 70 degrees like on a Monday, and then by Tuesday or Wednesday we had snow and it was 35. So it went from like a really sweet, nice fall to like, boom, there's winter. Oh, well.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's so crazy how fast the weather can change.
Yeah.
But all right. So you guys ready to get into muscle building mistakes?
Yeah, it's a great topic, especially this time of year. Most people are finished with prep. They're
Mhm.
ready to think about the off season. And these are some, you've really done a good job putting these together, Kayla. We were talking about that before the show, but this is the time of year where you see most people trying to grow. It's cold and people are done with shows or they're new. So this is a good topic.
Yep. Yep. So we have a few things put together for you guys of just some tips that you can do when you're in your off season, your growth phases, anything like that, to make sure you get the most out of it, because that's the most important thing is we want to optimize training. So uh, starting with the first one, I think this is a common one, and I can just also say that I've been guilty of this too, is training body parts only once per week. So this kind of gets you into some trouble because you tend to overload one body part and then you end up only hitting it one day a week and you have 6 days of rest in between. And that's just, it's not enough stimulus to provide that for that muscular adaptation. So what do you guys have on that?
That this is something to where I cut my teeth with the bro split, 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 2 off. Jason, you probably remember that was, I know that's what Mark Rosemeany recommended to me back in the day when I kind of first started out. Body parts once a week. It's also what we saw in flex, muscular development, because that's what the quote unquote big guys did. And I added some decent muscle there, but I was such a newbie to where no matter what you do, I think people need to remember when you're new, everything works. If you're genetically elite, everything works. If you're using PEDs, if you're using performance enhancing drugs, everything works. So it's getting past that and remembering to keep advancing. Once you do the bro split to start out, I don't think there's anything wrong with that when people start out for a little bit, but to advance past it, you have to train body parts more than once a week because the research shows when you train chest, for example, you turn on protein synthesis, you turn on growth, about 3 days later, that's shut off. So no matter what, you can do 100 sets for chest on Monday, no matter what, by Thursday, it's done growing no matter what. So why not turn around and train it again? The key is to get enough, total sets of volume in to train it twice a week. So a lot of guys live by the example of just train a ton, high volume 1 day a week, but it's better to split it up. And the research is there to back that up. Dr. Brad Schoenfeld's done it, but that's kind of my take, and that's how I explain it to my clients. What about you, Jason?
Well, God, I have just so many wide range of clients these days that I have some clients that literally I can only train them 3 days a week. Well, there ain't no way you're really getting that done. But generally speaking, we aren't really looking to build muscle per se as much as get strength in them and, get them moving. And then, I've got my performance athletes and my bodybuilders. I have plans where like I'll hit upper, lower, something like that. So everything's getting hit twice a week. So that's everything. And then I'll have plans where like someone's like unbalanced on their legs. I'll have them hit maybe legs 2 or 3 times a week. The upper body gets hit twice and we'll overreach for like 8 to 10 weeks. Peds are probably in if that's the case on that one. It's hard to work legs 3 times a week and recover is my point. But it runs a gamut for me. But I agree with the statement you made. After 3 days, we pretty much know scientifically that protein synthesis is turned off. So you're not really regrowing. So it does make sense to hit it again. I've even brought up weak body parts training them daily. Now you can't take it to failure each time, but you can put some blood in there and that works too. So there's a lot of ways to kind of do it, but
I remember something because perpetually always trying to bring your chest up because it's been your lagging body part. You've really done a great job of bringing that up. I remember one thing that you did back in the day, and I think maybe, our friend John Meadows, wish he was still around. Unfortunately, he's not, but I think John maybe told you this, but you were doing every time you'd shower, you do push-ups. It's just kind of a rule of thumb. Did that work? Did that approach work? Because that's pretty
it
much like a
did.
daily
And
thing.
what I do now is I do it differently. When any day I'm in the gym, in between sets, I'm doing like an angled push-up off of a bench.
Right.
It's a failure. So if I could be training back and I just did rows, rather than stand around and pick my ass, I'm doing something to push blood into my chest. And it has brought it up. My biggest problem is I have some really good long muscle bellies in certain areas, but those are just short attachments. I only have so much to build. But I've tried to do the best I can. But yeah, like a chest will be twice a week for me. And then I do those push-ups literally every time I'm in the gym. And I've done it with my calves. And I get a lot of compliments on my calves these days. It's not they're big. I think it's they're well shaped and lean. But I train calves every day. Like every day I'm in the gym, I train calves. And they came up. I get compliments. So it did something.
Awesome. I don't think that there's like a lot of people are going to ask about like an ideal split. And I don't think we can actually like accurately say that because like Jason and John just said, like these things are very variable depending on the person, their goals, their genetics, their availability for the gym, their lagging areas, like all of that. So it's going to be what's ideal for you. And that's why like us as coaches like can help you with that. And that's what we're here for. So same thing with like male versus female and also like natty versus enhanced. You know, it all depends. There's so many variables in there to use too. The next one is your recovery just sucks. If you're not recovering enough, you can't grow. And that just definitely means like quality sleep. If you're training too hard too often, again, like we said from the last one, that's like variable per person. Also doing like too much cardio in the off season. Like, do you guys usually see that as a common problem or any other ones to add to that one?
This is a good topic, especially because you started to hit on this, Jason. You said, these days you've got some people that can only train 3 days a week, for example, and it's really hard for them to make gains. But I guess I'll jump in and talk about the quality sleep because that's the most unsexy word that you can talk about. That's probably the most important thing that you can talk about is sleep, and people just want to neglect it. And to me, when it comes to making gains, there's three things up at the top, and I think they're all equal. I think training, nutrition, and sleep. I think those are the three at the top that should be the most important. And you in our notes, I'm looking at our notes, you put quality sleep, you put quality in all caps. And I think that's the important thing because I have clients that they'll get 5 hours of sleep, but then they'll take a nap every day. That's not the same as getting 7 hours of sleep and getting into deep sleep. And those areas where you can really, that's when your body recovers and grows a lot. It's where your metabolism speeds up a lot, that last half of growth. And it's where cortisol drops really hard. So you've got all these things, if you don't get enough quality sleep, cortisol is elevated cortisol is enemy number one, in my opinion, as far as crushing your testosterone levels. So from a natural perspective, somebody not on, performance enhancing drugs, quality sleep becomes right up there at the very freaking top if you're natural, because you want to keep your hormones in a good place. You have to get good quality sleep and deep sleep. So that's one that I think if people would prioritize that as much as they do their training and mapping their diet out, they would make much better progress. Because think about quality sleep over the course of a year versus just sleep over the course of the year. How much growth is that going to add up to? How much is that going to keep your hormones in a healthy place? So I think that's a good one. I'm glad you put that there.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, because in a growth phase, this is obviously your off season or your improvement season. And this is where these types of things start to kind of like slack, because we don't have that show focus in front of us. Like, so it's like, oh, this is my time to like take a break, so to say, but it's really not. Like, this is your time to be even more strict, if anything, because this is the time where it's more crucial because you need that muscle growth if you want to compete and you want to get better. So I think that a lot of people need to kind of take that into account. So, Jason, you want to take training too hard too often with all the clients that you have, myself included?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's hard to know. It's hard to know what your threshold is until you've pushed yourself hard enough to know what your threshold is. And I, as a coach, don't know either until I've kind of pushed it. So there's been times I've pushed someone too hard. I remember a client I had him training 5 days a week, thought he was on plenty of food. Maybe we just weren't communicating or he wasn't letting me know how bad he was feeling. But all of a sudden, it was like he was in adrenal fatigue, and we literally had to go to yoga for I think it was about 8 weeks. And I've never seen that with a guy, but I felt bad because then I realized, man, he only really should be training maybe 4 days a week, 3 days a week with, some other types of modalities to keep him moving. Cause he wasn't a bodybuilder per se, but he wanted to, model and do things like that. So, but once I figured that out, then I knew. And like with you, Kayla, like again, I got you on my hands on you, I fixed you, and then I put you through a prep, and it was, it set you back out. So now we're doing things where, like with Kayla, we have her push hard for 4 weeks, and then she comes back on a deload on the 5th. And I don't care if she's losing fat like a champ or building muscle like a champ. I'm going to stop her, deload her, help her cortisol set, because I don't want to get stuck in that buildup. If you keep going because, I feel great. Well, finally you hit the wall. So, I mean, it's really hard to figure it out because sometimes you kind of fuck up a little bit to figure it out, and you kind of got to know what your threshold is. And if you aren't pushing yourself hard enough, you're never going to meet your true potential. So you kind of got to do it. We all kind of got to do it eventually and realize, well, what's your sweet spot? Okay, for me, it's probably 4 to 5 days a week. This 6 to 7 day training isn't going to work for me. Maybe it's 3 to 4. But you kind of got to push and try things. I think that's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, because otherwise you're just kind of like not slacking, but like holding back a little bit, and like you don't want to leave anything in the tank, so to say. So otherwise it's always like a well, what if kind of a question. So, and as coaches, like we don't obviously know the right answer 100% when we get clients. So like, yeah, as coaches we might screw up sometimes, but it's better to fail, so to say, and learn from something than to just like play it safe all the time. You know what I mean? So with, you also mentioned about not eating enough. So we can just jump over to that one. I had that one on my list, but we can jump to that one next. And I think that's a really big, important one too, is especially in females, they're just not eating enough to recover and enough to grow new tissue, because either one, they're too afraid of gaining too much body fat, and two, they just don't know because of, societal norms and everything. So where do you guys want to add in for that?
I think that's pretty common, especially if you have someone that's new coming to you. I think people that are a little bit more established, they've done shows, like they come to us, they obviously know they need to eat more. But when someone's new, they generally tend to, females especially, undereat a little bit. And proteins definitely. I know we're gonna get to that like in detail, but proteins maybe not enough. But I see the two things that I see that kind of go hand in hand. I know cardio, we're talking about food, but you mentioned earlier about cardio, like doing too much cardio in the off season. Typically with females, what I'll see is they'll come to me and they want to grow their glutes, right? Like that's the thing right now. Like they want a firm butt and they want to grow their glutes, but they're doing a lot of cardio and they're not eating enough, but they also want to grow. So it's one of those things you just have to manage it. And if you're not eating, if you're new, you can grow at maintenance because you can recomp and stuff like that. But you probably need to be slightly over maintenance. And if you do it slightly over, growth will take longer, but you won't add fat as much. So it's that's why having a coach really helps. But I see people like females trying to grow on 1,300 calories. It's just not going to happen, and doing cardio and stuff like that. So I get it. They just don't know, but it's a mistake. And that's why we're doing this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think on the female side of it too, I think we're just like scared of food, so to say, because we have all these like social media things coming at us about this is how you should look and all of that. And that's just hard for girls to understand sometimes. And I've had lots of females come and be like, I know I need to eat more, but I'm scared of like how to do that. So like I have to help, with just reassurance and showing like, okay, well, you have to make sure your gut's under control. And then like any hormones are off, that can also affect things too. So getting all that figured out. And like, I have a girl right now, actually, that she's always had a hard time with just increasing food. And that's what we're doing right now. And she's seeing really good progress. And now she wants to do some training and stuff. And so that's awesome to see. So that's great for females. But what about
I was going to say, I was going
go
to say one thing real quick, because I'll point this out for the females. When I have someone come to me and they're really scared, or I'm trying to work calories up and they're scared, I always point something out. So if you're listening and this is you, I can promise you this is literally the Bible. You're not going to gain fat if you stick to your calories and don't go eat off plan very often. A lot of people are gaining too much because they're having these giant cheat days. Like they're not cheat meals or cheat days. But, a female's not going to gain a bunch of fat on 1,800 calories a day if she's training hard multiple days a week. And I try and point that out. Like, you're not really going to gain a lot of fat from your daily calories. If you're a female eating 2,100, yeah, you're probably going to add a little bit, maybe, depending on the person. But it's not the daily calories that people should be scared of. It's that giant, it's that bottle of wine on Saturday night, or it's the giant cheat meals in free days, like the blowouts and stuff like that. That's what gets people. So inherently, they keep their calories lower during the week so they can have these giant days on the weekend. And that's to me, that's what I see getting people, guys or girls. So I just wanted to add that in. Stick to those daily calories, and you won't have to worry too much.
I think for the undereater, you have to, as a coach, create mental change. You have to help them see that to really get the body they want, they've got to be able to perform really well and got to be able to be strong and progress, whether it's reps or sets. So you got to get a mind change. And so I always have them ranking strength and energy. And, we want to see those going up, especially when I'm dealing with women who come to me or who are under eating. I want to see that going up. That's a metric that we can check a box and say, hey, that's a win. So it's really a mental shift. I had one gal today, I was doing her check-ins. She came to me with a bunch of problems. She was eating 1,200 calories. She's down 8 pounds, and she's up to 1,900 calories. And she was really upset and frustrated today because she didn't lose weight. And I said, first off, you're down 8 pounds, eating 700 more calories than you were. Your body's getting healthy. Your energy's great. And then I compared her pictures for her first picture to now, side by side, her side profile. And I mean, it was night and day, the recomposition. But because the scale didn't go down, she totally forgot about how the fact that she's eating a ton of food now and her energy's great and all that. But that scale and that losing weight wasn't it. So it's a mindset change. The reason men do better at this is we don't care about being a little fluffy, and we want to be strong, and we want to. And if we're eating heavy, we're strong. We know it. We feel it. So it's a mind shift that you got to work with on people.
Yeah.
Fluffy. You said fluffy, and I sucked in a little bit just automatic. I was like, hey.
I think females definitely have like the hardest time with like more food and gaining weight too, of course. But what about the guy, who is a hard gainer that they can eat and eat and eat and eat, and it's just so hard to grow? I know, like, Jason, that was you, can you touch on that for some of those people?
The problem with me is, I am more of a stubborn gainer, but I don't like to eat either. Mm-hmm. And that's been my biggest problem throughout my career. Whether it's not great digestion or just not being hungry. But 100%, you got to figure out a way to get the size on. For me, I've always been someone who doesn't really get overly fat, and I get sick of eating just rice and chicken. So I have to dirty it up a little bit for myself. Like last night we went and got Skyline chili, which is a big thing in Cincinnati. And it's, it's like, we looked it up. It's like 900 calories for what I got. And it was 45 grams of fat, 70 grams of carbs, whatever. And so I add those things in to keep basically getting the calories I would need to grow. So you kind of got to learn that about yourself too. So if you are a hard gainer, you may need to dirty it up just a little bit. That's my advice for the hard gainers. Now, if you're more endomorphic, that is not going to work for you. You're going to need to be following a stricter diet, less carbs, et cetera, et cetera. So that just depends.
Being that guy, being the endomorphic, I think I'm more meso-endo, but still, like, I can be a fat guy real easy. I would rather be a little hungry and have to watch what I eat than I've got some clients that are taking in 250 protein, 500 carbs, 120 fats a day. And while a lot of people like me think, oh, they're so lucky, I'm telling you, that probably feels like having a buffet every single day. Like, I have to really hammer the fast digesting carbs for those people around the workout, lots of intra-workout carbs, whey pre and post, so their stomach's not heavy, cereal before and after the workout, like things that digest really fast, like Jason said, just kind of dirty it up. And then on top of that, if they're still not gaining, which a lot aren't, I'll throw in a free meal on top of that a couple days a week if I have to, and I'll have to add that way, because I mean at some point, like some people you just have to. It's few and far between, but I'd rather be the fat guy that's a little bit hungry. You know, Jason, I've heard you say it before. Sometimes it feels good to be a little bit hungry for a minute. You know, I would rather be that guy than somebody that feels like you're stuffed all the time, because it's just
Yeah,
miserable.
the force feeding isn't miserable. I mean, I've always hated that aspect of trying, and then I started to realize, you know, I'm only going to get so big. I've pushed calories for years. So for me, finally, it was like, you know what? I just want to look like a bodybuilder year round, be lean, and what that brings me, it brings me. And you know, when I was still pushing hard, like that actually worked the best for me. When I just said, "Fuck it, I'm going to eat when I'm hungry. I'm going to eat healthy food mainly." And I made some of my best progress. Kind of just stopped worrying about forcing that food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Alrighty, next one. We're going to talk a little bit more about like training routines. So typically some people have the idea that you need to go in and you need to change your workout every single week. Some people are on the same workout way too long. So basically, what's the ideal length of a program for someone to be on? Like, how long do you guys typically run your programs for?
I'm typically 8 weeks. And my point is, and sometimes I go 10, but hell, I've had people growing and I'm like, are you enjoying what you're doing? Yep. All right. Let's just stay on the plan. Like Ronnie Coleman stayed on the same fucking workout plan pretty much his entire career. I know Dorian did as well, he said. So if it works for those guys, why do you need a program changed every 2 weeks? You don't. And beyond that, you're not mastering that exercise.
Yep.
Every time I'm on a machine, and if it's something new, my mind is thinking, how can I make this work better to tax the muscle? Not just that doesn't mean make it easier. It's almost, how can I make this harder? And I feel the muscle really working. So it's a different mindset. A lot of people want to make it as easy as possible. I want to make it as hard as possible, less efficient, so that the muscle is doing all the work and it's hard. So that's my take. 8 weeks is what I do with most of my clients, but shit, I've kept people on the same one for 16 weeks because they were growing like a weed.
Mm-hmm.
I've kept people on longer, but I take a little different approach. So I'll send people different workout splits that I've written, but because I'm not there in person, I tend to tell them, hey, listen, follow the volume, follow the total sets, but I need you to learn how to find the exercises that work the best for you, like that you feel working the best, and you need to hammer home on those exercises. Don't worry about a bunch of variety. If you don't feel your chest doing a bench press, don't fucking do it. Just because I wrote it on the plan, and I have that on my plans, but I also put on there, if you don't feel it right and you feel the hammer press, go hammer press every single time you train your chest. So I tell people to find the exercises they feel the best and really just kind of hone in on those. But the way that I break up the training is, you know, some body parts have higher volume to help bring those up. Some days, maybe you train chest more than you do your back if you need to bring your chest up. But the way I really break it up is with the overreaching and deloads. And we've done a whole episode on that. So typically about, Jason, I'm probably right in line, I think, with what you just said. You said about every 8 weeks, about every 5th or 6th weeks, I'm going to overreach them really hard for a week or two, and then I'm going to deload. So about every 8 weeks or so, they're starting over at ground zero. They're going to ramp their way up, deload about every 8 weeks. It's changing up. So that's really what I do. Where before the mistake, and I guess what we're talking about, the mistake is, fuck, we used to just all go in the gym and just train hard. Oh, it's chest and tries today. We're just going to go in and train hard. Like, when's the last time you took a week off or deloaded? Oh, I had like 2 years ago. Like that was us back in the day. And that's a huge mistake. And that's also why you see a lot of, I'd just say weightlifters, right? We call them gym rats or, you know, gym bros or whatever. They just go in and train hard and they never make any progress because they're not being intentional with their training. They're just training hard. So I think those are good ways to kind of break it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of do like 4 to 8 weeks, depending on if they're a power lifter or a bodybuilder. Obviously, bodybuilders, we don't need to have that much change. But I'm also very hands-on with my training. Like I have my clients send me videos on things that they're having troubles with, or like a more compound movement that might be tougher, because I want to see how they're performing it and I want to see the intention behind it. And then I'll have sometimes where I'll kind of ask them, and I'll just go based on biofeedback. Like, hey, do you need a deload this week? Like, how are you feeling? They're kind of feeling like crap. I'll be like, okay, let's deload a little bit. And then I won't even switch out every single exercise and switch the whole program. I'll only switch out a couple if they're really liking it. And they're just like, yeah, I think I'm kind of plateauing on this one or that one. And then I'll switch those out for them. So, I have a girl right now that's doing really well with that kind of template, but I train her in person too. So I see her a lot, which is really nice to have that like hands-on type approach with clients too. So with ones that are remote, I still try to make it as hands-on as possible with just videos and stuff, and not like they're videoing their whole entire workout, obviously, but just with stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it too.
Kayla, you put on here why getting the advice from the biggest, most genetically gifted person isn't the best idea. I think that's something good for you to point out, because you put it on there. And I think we see that happen a lot, right? Like we're all, especially when we first start out, we're all kind of drawn to that person, the biggest, most muscular person in the gym. Usually they're on performance enhancing drugs. So you figure out later as you kind of wisen up to what's going on. But that doesn't always translate into the best approach, right?
Right. Yep. Usually with the most, like the biggest gifted person in the gym, things are going to come easy to them. They're going to look at a dumbbell and their biceps are going to grow, like stuff like that. And they don't have to really, they have to try obviously, but they don't have to try as hard as someone who's had to figure out like, okay, this doesn't work for me, or like, I can't connect with this, or how do I make this grow? Like, Jason, with your calves, like, you had to figure out that doing stuff in between exercises to just get more volume in there. Some people just need that. In females, I know that there's a lot of times like their upper bodies have a really hard time growing. So, someone like me, like my upper body is growing pretty well. I've always had like large back and everything like that. So probably wouldn't be your best advice, obviously, but I do know how to help people connect with that and everything too. So that's a little different. But yeah, those people are going to just be like, have very generic advice, I feel like. So getting it.
Well, and we see it quite a bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we see it quite a bit. We see a lot of booty growth programs from girls that genetically just have a giant set of glutes. You know what I mean? You look at pictures of them when they first started and their ass was already huge, and now they're selling those programs, and that's totally fine. But why not go talk to the girl that didn't have a butt, and now she's got, a very nice set of glutes that she's proud of. I always used to, at the Physique Summit, I'd pull Cliff Wilson out and I just make him a perfect example. I'd be like, this is a guy that has the worst genetics I've ever fucking seen in my life. And that's Cliff Wilson. And he's built a pretty damn good, respectable physique. And I'm like, why would you not take advice from this guy? He's not as impressive as the other guys in the gym, but this guy knows how to grow way more than anyone else does, because he's had to really work for it. Or Jason bringing his chest up. I've used that multiple times, or calves. So talk to the people that have had a weak body part or a shitty physique and they've built something. That's the person you want to get advice from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I know sometimes these IFBB pros, like the open guys, will post pictures of how they looked when they were like 15, and they make it sound like they like look terrible, and they got like 6 packs and brachialuses in their biceps are carved out and their delts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I didn't look like that. I didn't even look like that 5 years after lifting weights, and you're trying to tell me you don't have good genetics? Like, come on, man.
Yep. Oh, I can definitely attest to the glute thing. That is like my trouble area. And when I first started competing, I had a flat ass. Like it was just not there. So I've had to work really hard on connecting that and getting that down. But, with that, comes to our last tip or piece of advice, is just like your intent with training. That's going to be your biggest thing right there, is just your effort, your intensity, and your progressions in your movements. If you don't have any kind of intensity in your training, like obviously you don't want to train like too hard all the time, like what we talked about, but you got to do it with the correct intensity, and you want to feel that connection. It's not just about slinging weight. Anyone can go do that, but you're not actually getting like the muscle connection out of there. So I guess, do you guys have anything to add to that one too?
I mean, I know around the time that I really was making my best gains, around 38 to 43, 42, I redid everything in terms of my training. And what I mean by that is I started at, like, if I was doing a hammer machine for chest, I put the 35s on there. And I literally, nothing else could flex other than my chest. And I was completely over exaggerating it, but it was helping me learn the firing and the motor patterns that really I had just kind of neglected, because I'd throw 3 plates on there and man it up and just swing it up, and not awful form, but just, and I started over that way. And I finally worked it back up to where I was at my weight that I was doing. And now I could really feel these muscles working the whole time. So I kind of just blew it all up and tried that. And it's an ego thing, to not have the weight. But by then I didn't give 2 shits. Like, I had one of the better physiques in the gym. So if they look at me and say, that guy's weak, I'm like, I don't care, but it takes time to kind of get to that point. But I really wish that I would have done that sooner. And just really made myself, with, like you said, in the word intention, really being intent on that muscle that you're trying to work. When you're working your back, are you really pulling with your lats first, or are you pulling with your biceps and your forearms? Like, I've done all that throughout my life. And then it's like, okay, when you really slow it down and just use them as hooks, you can't use nearly as much weight, but now it's all back. So things like that are what I feel like is important.
Dropping
And I
your
think,
ego is huge.
Yeah.
yep. And it's never too late. You talked about doing this at 38 to 42, and you'd already been training for 20 years, or near 20 years. So it's not too late to start over and rebuild, start over from scratch. You have something on here, Kayla, that I'm glad you put this on here. You're talking about a logbook. And I guess that's something that I want to talk about. We don't spend a lot of time talking about. A good friend of mine, Jason Wells, he's my co-host over at the Fat Muscle Project podcast, the sister podcast that I do. He is to the point now, he's been training very hard. Jason, Jason Wells really well at this point. He's been training really hard. The guy's lost like 250 pounds. He stepped on stage for a transformation contest. And it's to the point now we need to bring his legs up. Like, he's progressed to the point to where the training that I've had him doing over the years, it's time to take it up to the next level. And what I'm about to say and what I'm about to have him do, he couldn't have just started from day one. Like, you have to progress to what I'm going to say. So to me, it's if you're someone that's got about 5 years in, this is for you. You can try and beat the logbook. And a lot of people don't understand this concept. So it kind of reminds me of DC training, stands for dog crap. I know Jason's a fan of Jason Wells is a fan of Dusty Hanshaw and people like that. This is a concept where you go in and you pick certain exercises, and I'm going to lay a whole program out. That's not important. But you try and beat the logbook every single time. You try and beat the weight. You try to add just a little bit of weight, and you're trying to force strength and you're trying to force growth. And deloads become a very important part of this process here. But this is something I did early on. It's when I made my best gains after about 5 years, from that 2012 to 2015, 16 timeframe. Jason, did you ever play around with trying to beat the logbook? And what are your thoughts on that? I've seen some good growth for my clients, but they have to get to that point. And sometimes I just don't have a lot of people that are that advanced that are ready to go to that level. But I think beating the logbook has its place.
Yes, but I'll be honest with you. Every time I've tried to use a logbook, it lasts like 2 weeks. It feels like
because you don't like to track, right?
It feels like fucking homework. Like I've at that point in my life, I was in front of a desk all day dealing with legal documents and trying to bang out diets on the side. And by the time I got to the gym, I didn't want to think about shit. I wanted to train and feel the muscle get a pump, and that's what I wanted to do. And people say, well, it's not about fun. Well, it was for me. So I did it that way. I would remember my big lifts. Like, I could remember if I got 4 wheels on a certain lift and I needed to get past that. Leg press, I'd keep an idea. Squats, I'd keep an idea. The big compounds on my chest. But I wasn't sitting there writing everything down because it just felt like homework to me, and it wasn't fun. And I wasn't going to.
And I get it. And I think, it also, Kayla, goes over to the powerlifting world too. Like, you have to keep a logbook. You've got to keep a number with percentages. This is a little different because it's a bodybuilding program, but if you're someone that doesn't mind tracking and keeping track of a logbook with certain lifts, this program that I'm going to write for him, it kind of takes a page out of the powerlifting book, because you're trying to force strength. You're trying to force strength, and growth comes with that when you apply it to a bodybuilding prep. So if you're someone that doesn't mind the logbook, I fucking hate it. I won't. I'll go into a gym and just go by feel every single time, but I'm also not an IFBB pro. So it really just depends on who you are and what your goals are, I guess.
Yeah. See, I am one that likes to use the logbook because type A over here, like I like to have that. But like, I also know if I get too hyper focused on like my weights aren't going up, why aren't they going up? And like you get too anxious about it, then it's like we take it away. And I have a lot of my clients use a logbook too, when they're ready for it, to track their weights. And I also explain that, it's not about just adding weight, it's about adding, try to do a little bit more reps this week, or try to do better execution. And that goes into why I have them take videos of like their main exercise for that day. So that way they can see and they can track it for themselves too, and understand like where they're going wrong, especially for my powerlifters. Like that's definitely a necessity. But some of my bodybuilders too, I'll have them do that. And even my Gen Pop, they just like to see their numbers go up too, which is fun. And it's another way to track things if they're like, oh, I'm not losing weight or something. And then you're like, yeah, but look how freaking strong you're getting. So that makes sense too. So.
Well, since we're about to end this, I did want to, if you're watching YouTube, we will have these logbooks. If you notice here, these Phat Muscle Project logbooks up on the website. So those will be up just in time. Jason's over here laughing because I have a shameless plug going on. But if you are type A like Kayla, you're not a lazy fucker like me and Jason, then you can get a logbook and log your lifts, make gains. Kayla, this was a really good episode. You did a hell of a job putting this together. And I know like we're running short on time. We could probably throw in some bonus stuff, like make sure you're taking creatine monohydrate and all that. But
yeah,
I know that you had people, you had the beginners, but you also had some advanced stuff in here. So you did a really good job putting this together.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of factors, of course, all the time. So if you're at that point where you're just like, I don't really know what else to do, or stuck, that's maybe a time to get a coach, and obviously all of us coach. So if you guys ever have questions, you can reach out to us. I'm sure all of us are happy to answer questions, of course. And yeah, otherwise we will see you next time. Do you guys have any other closing thoughts or notes?
I'm good.
All righty.
Good episode. See you guys.
All right. Bye, guys.